Hi. I don't know if you've watched earlier videos or what have you, but I spoke about this Cartesian thing. This Cartesian thing, I term it as a 400-year-old problem where we sort of mucked up back in Europe, and we've developed some laws, distributive systems, and methods of wealth distribution and what have you, on the basis of some values that I think, if replaced, or we go to the individual values and expand those rather than dictate. I think it make things an awful lot easier. Yeah, now, it took 400 years to get in, so this type of thing. There's no sort of revolutionary thing. It's a real flicking issue to get out of this. I mean, there's a lot of thoughts that's going to need to go into it. My view is it's the Aristotelian type of arrangement where you enhance the individual, and the reason is that it brings an awful lot more. In my view, there's going to be an absolute huge industry. If you change over. What it means is that, and it also means that rather than go for the distributive systems that we got now, where we can narrow down some of the distribution channels, particularly food and stuff like that, rather than go to the Platonic distributive systems, where you can just turn freedom and liberality off, just with mere law. That's how fragile things are. Particularly in Ireland with the fuel crisis, I'm a bit worried about that. Because I'd be afraid that there'd be a disproportionate response to the issues that need to be restitution. Yeah, or if you think in terms of music, a harmonic resolution to human the human condition as it is in Ireland at the moment. Yeah. Right. Okay. This is about listen, come here. There's huge industry in Aristotelianism, and what happens is that it's the individual. You can't just turn off freedom or legality. It's actually measured within the human. It's part of the human matrix of the values that the human will have. Not this rubbish that they come out with, our values and stuff. That's not really. That's lipstick. It's cosmetic. I'm talking about real stuff in the human being, for everybody, and I think it should be for everybody, because part of that system, as it unfolds, let's say over maybe 100 or 200 years, you'll see that it becomes an awful lot more mobile. There's a lot more what might have been termed about 100 years ago called class mobility, and but with this system, it's really founded on human value. Yeah. And it's not culture specific, yeah. Okay, but it's definitely anti-distributive systems, pure distributive systems. You need to go commutative systems because this way it would just make things an awful lot easier, a hell of a lot easier, yeah. And it means that you're not going to go, down to zero, so down to zero. I'm thinking of Joan on a treadmill, but no. Oh no, stop. So next, right, tax. To tax is a demand concept. Yeah, it's Platonic extraction, like justice. You just think you can pull it out and then you distribute as you like. Yeah, the word tax means to weaken. Yeah, I mean it's got an A in it. Yeah, I don't mean to come back to this A thing, but it's going to make maybe more sense later on. Particularly when you start talking about people like Jesus or something like that, but the A, yeah, the alpha thing, where was it? Yeah, so you got the A, it's the human being, it's the spirit of the human being, yeah, and X is just mean X, that X means draw out, like example, ample, and then example, yeah, and you draw it out, so it's a suction thing, demand concept, yeah. So I just want to make sure that I've got a thing. Yes, just imagine, and because in distributive systems, all the laws are phrased like that. But if you think that over the last 400 years, if you do recognise that a mistake has been made, think of the industry and having to reframe every single, or reevaluate every single law that's been written since 1666, or thereabouts when the I think it was the Northern School or the Spanish School. No, not the Spanish. Yes, not the Spanish School. I think maybe the Northern School was the one that synthesized Aristotle and Aquinas. Aquinas drawing out the best of people, and Aristotle's virtue ethics and everything. It just really worked. So any type of thing like that in any culture really is really sort of a contributory factor to sort of another type of arrangement. Yeah. So, okay. The other thing on the thing, so that's what tax means, to weaken. Yeah, and it's a demand thing. I think King John. Yeah, King John, Richard the Lionheart's brother, who just comes around, takes the grain, takes the goats, take this and pulls it out of the land, and off he goes to feed his army, or to feed Richard's army as he does his crusades. Yeah. Okay, so the next thing is yeah, in an Aristotelian system, yeah, and where the community sort of self-regulates or whatever like that, there would be sort of that federal type of overreaching among all sort of communities, if you like, but the arrangement is slightly different, and the paradigm is totally different. Yeah. Yeah. So with the Aristotelian, it's not a tax. You don't tax an Aristotelian person. Person has a duty. It is what is due from the individual. So it's not a blanket tax, stratified, Taylor's lines. Yeah. Or really, and we've got the technology to do it now. Yeah. The technology is here, and all that laws from the last century, and all the things that you might use in all those. Scientific studies that they're, and some of them quasi-scientific studies on human beings, whatever, rather than use that to control the next 500 or 1,000 years, you can use that to help build the individual, yeah, rather than destroy them, yeah, and turn them into objects, yeah. That's not. I'm only talking about the objectification of human beings, like a man or a woman. Like, there's still men and women. Like, I mean, she still looks whatever way she looks, and he still looks. Well, he's not as good looking, isn't he? Okay. So the next thing is only what is due from the. Yeah, only what is due. Yeah, it is the human thing. Yeah, and it's what their responsibility is. Because you have to have your own choice to have responsibility. The ability to respond. If you have no choice, you have no ability to respond, or at least it's narrowed quite a bit. Yeah. So your law, as you see, the individual, and now that we know what we know about individuals, we can actually reframe it. And you might think that it's very, very, very simple, but it's not, because I think H.L.A. Hart had the idea, and I think he was a logical, legal positivist. I think, yeah. I mean, from what I got, and he was the one that said that you can apply law, and it's all right. You can intervene in people. Like, if something's going on, if there is an is, and something pops out of that is, it's really detrimental to your community. Well, then you can go in there and you can just, you can shave it off if the community's not able to deal with it. And that community calls on that thing, yeah. On some sort of just. I'm not saying this is how things should be done. I'm just saying that there are doors, and there are doors and ways, and I think individualism is the way to go. Because from the individualism and the individual characters that you build in that, those are what are going to sing to the not. It's not really an idea. It's the feeling, because candor, bravery, and kindness are feelings. So your ideals aren't empty now. They will be something for which any human being can actually connect with. And that was just in the governance side. The scientific side, on the basis of individuation and maybe some sort of idea of inertial diversity, and that really goes back to. And that's going to kick in later on as well. It goes back to the actual human being, their own makeup, their own thing, their own vibe. I mean, I know it sounds really 60s and what have you like this, but it's really all this stuff with the tongue and all that doing, making noise out of your mouth. It's not the same as listening to somebody just, like you see some of the regional dialects, that basically single voice, the words, But we're going to sort of put it down there, and not only that, we're going to rip the whole language out of it, and we're going to give it to non-being. Non-being, I know it sounds different, but it takes up too much causal space, yeah, and doesn't pay any rent, what I mean by it actually extracts from people rather than contributes to the people, I think, in some ways. And I think that can be, it might be a store system, and some needs would be met, but not necessarily that which exceed needs, mere wants sometimes, you may not need that because you'd be engaged in an entirely different industry, and that industry would be heavily epistemological, related to knowledge, human knowledge. How I see that is with the individuation on the system, on the sort of the power system, and then the connectivity on the science, and then I think it's going to make the as above, so below sort of connectivity is going to be an awful lot better. Now I know there's astrology and all that stuff, and I don't really know much about it, but I had chicken around and stuff like that. But the thing about astrology, if you just forget everything else, and even if you're doing astrology, I think they tend to read books, whereas that's what you should be reading, because that's where the science is: observe, note down. Now, a lot of the language we have at the moment would never be able to discern some, and possibly wouldn't be able to discover some things that exist on the planet that you'd have to perceive, and it's quite likely that you wouldn't be able to engage in that perception because it's been weakened by your normative education. So that would be counter-evolutionary. It's sort of like putting a wheat lamp on your vehicle, if you know what I mean. Okay, so what's next? Just thinking you'd have to, apart from the law, you'd have to define and re-induct every single human characteristic, and actually connect an awful lot with the people, so that the language that the ideal language that politicians tend to use now, because it's all Platonic, and what the people want to talk about, the languages they're different. They're just I know the people here might try and engage with this, but until you actually get some connectivity, I would think that would be in any maybe not to Ireland, but in any culture. And I'm actually speaking this as a generality, not necessarily specific to Ireland. So this takes up too much causal space. This whole paradigm, and it's an additional paradigm to the one our normal existence, really. It's an additional paradigm, and you got to separate the language. You got to separate the junk out, so that when anything that's left, then you know that you begin to start to see things a little bit clearer. Without the information, because that's what information is. It's already formed for you in form. And it is. Most of it's informed. No bearing is what's going to happen. Now I know that the first science, the very first science was looking at the sky. That's what it was, just looking at the sky. What else? There's fishing and all this, and then there's a point going way back before that when the human being would have become self-aware. But it's not really looking outward, but sort of acknowledges it's a being, a thing that with hands and without sort of the pure instinctual thing, It's sort of that you could observe yourself or whatever like that, with awareness rather than instinctual licking the wounds or whatever like that. I'm probably way out on a limb here, but I'm really trying to link up a few ideas that I think in my head, when you convert them to the language, it'll work very, very well. So what would be next? So taxation, that would have, in this system that you develop over the years, taxation comes out and duty is the thing. Now that doesn't mean there's no taxes. There will be some taxes, but they're not going to take your life and take half of it, because that's not what really, that's sort of, for people to work their life, on the assumption, let's say, that because they have access to a planet that's able to feed them or whatever like that. But to take a huge chunk of that, it just doesn't. You might say we need to pay this, but you won't, because the Aristotelian system doesn't need a lot of baggage. Actually, it needs people who understand themselves and are able to convert knowledge, back into a real knowledge, not this objective sort of Smithsonian type of. I don't have a lot of. I have a lot of distrust for some of the distributive system, particularly, let's say, particular scientific institutions that would sort of prohibit. Hence, what I'm going to say later on might be a bit on. Listen, I am going to do that thing about Jesus, if you don't mind. But I got to tell you, like, you really, if it's, I'd mention in the title, but it may not be for you, because it might flip your idea a little bit. For me, it's more realistic. But then I'll look for the realism in the thing, yeah. And I think he was a real guy, and there are reasons for it.